I'm joined by a very extra special guest, and he's actually a pro at this, so I feel a bit privileged and a little bit under pressure that I am interviewing this one. But guys, say hello to Jay Hynd from The Guide, and Jay, say hello to our listeners.
Hello, how are you? Do you know
very
what?
well.
I am buzzing to be sat here because normally I'm sat in your seat, stressing and panicking about what I'm going to ask and what the guest is going to say and whether they're going to swear or not. And now it's your job.
And you're not going to swear,
I'm
are
not.
you?
Would I ever?
No. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to see you.
It's good to be here.
Thank you. And so for our listeners, I mean, I'm sure everyone, I hope they all know who you are and what you've done.
I doubt it. I really doubt it.
Well then, in that case, let them know a little bit about you, how you got started and what we are.
So I work in the media industry in Liverpool, and I've kind of worked in every type of medium and platform there is in the city. I've been there, been everywhere around Liverpool, and I'm kind of stuck in Liverpool trying to make a name for myself in the city. And
so instead of saying stuck, this is agreed to stay.
This is
champion.
agreed to stay. I really wanted to do it and smash it in Liverpool. And it's really difficult because you kind of get to a point in somewhere like Liverpool. We're a great city. We're massive. We're always evolving, you know, some fantastic events and everything else. But in terms of working in somewhere like the media, I think you kind of do get to a level where you think, I've got to move to London, or I've got to go to Manchester or abroad or something. And I did get to that point a few years ago, but then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay in Liverpool. I'm going to try and carry on and smash it as much as I possibly can within my hometown that I love.
And you are. And I am
trying.
I completely agree that, you know, people do think, you know, oh, I have to move to London or do whatever. But then I feel if you go to places like that, you're in an oversaturated market. You know, whereas here in our own hometown, one, you get lots of support, as we know from people of influence in the city, but it's giving something back to your hometown.
Definitely.
And shining a light for other people. So, on a day-to-day, what happens in the life of Jay?
Oh, God. Oh, God. Normal day-to-day for me, it could be the other good thing about working in the media, and I used to say this all the time, when I worked at Radio City or when I worked in TV or whatever, every single day is different. And that's what I love about the media, because you know, a normal day, every hour can be different. So you're working, for instance, at Radio City. I remember one morning I'd be interviewing Cilla Black. Then in the afternoon, I'd be out with the police doing 999 response or something and recording that. Then I might be recording a music show for something. Every single day, every night is completely different. And that's kind of followed suit throughout the career I've had so far. Every day is different, so you can't really pinpoint it.
So speaking of that then, because you've just identified 3 completely different areas, when you go and interview and you arrive on site, is your approach completely different then to as opposed to, obviously, Jay Hynd, you'd be going to interview the celebrity to the local news story?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're doing, obviously with news, you know, if you're doing something serious, for instance, just last week I'd done an interview with Merseyside Police about knife crime. Topic hot on everyone's lips at the moment. There's been some terrible cases. You have got to change your approach, and you've got to be a little bit more professional. So if you're interviewing Little Mix, you know, you can have a little bit more of a laugh and a little bit more chilled or whatever, if they've got the right mood on the face, that is. But obviously you've got to suit your tone and you know, to how you're going to present something.
Because what I'm getting at there is a skill set that is needed to work in media. You know, people look at creative industries, and I speak really passionately about this, but you develop, you know, a massive skill set when you come to work in an industry like this.
You really do, and again, it's. I always say a lot of people come to us now, and I'm lucky enough to be in a position to hopefully give some good advice. A lot of kids come and they say, "How do you do it? What do you do?" And my advice, the biggest piece of advice I would give to anyone who wants to work in radio or TV or in journalism, is to try everything and get everything on your CV and kind of challenge yourself to do things that you wouldn't normally do. So your CV is as full as possible with work experience, with on-the-job training, with just meeting people and getting into places that you wouldn't normally get into, and kind of fill your CV with lots of difference from the media industry before you go and tackle one job.
Okay, so let's take it back to the beginning. How did you get started and why media?
I always wanted, you know, when I was in school, I always used to say, I'm going to present the Brits one day, or Blue Peter or something. That's obviously never, ever happened and never, ever will.
The Brits, are we still champions?
I doubt that'll ever happen. What's his name do it the other day? And I was thinking, I'm nowhere near as good as him. But yeah, I always wanted to work in telly or in radio or something. And then from school, I was a bit of a mess up in school, I won't lie. I got kindly asked to leave before my A-levels. I was never academic, never into it. I always wanted to just go and work and get a job. So I was working in pubs and in bars around the city, and then I started doing work experience when I was 17. at Radio City, and it was when they had the big evening show, and radio was very different then, and Radio City was very different now. It's still a fantastic station, but it was very different to what it is now. There was more opportunity to get into somewhere like that, and I started doing the evening show for free 5 nights a week, helping out on the phones, and helping out doing research for interviews, pulling the CDs out and getting the CDs ready for the presenters.
They should know where to be
Compact
seen now.
discs, that's what they're called. It's so funny because back then, like, the old radio presenters would be talking about like vinyl and all this, the other stuff they used to use. And I used to be like, what? But you find yourself doing the same thing now because obviously CDs don't exist anymore. It's all digital. But doing stuff like that and just kind of, as I say, on the job training, making the tea, doing the photocopying, running around. And that's how I got into Radio City. And then from there, I got offered some paid work and other little bits, and I just worked my way up and kind of done every job there was to do in the station before eventually I went onto the breakfast show.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to come back to that in a minute, but you will be a dab hand at this. So anyone else who comes in, I'm like, okay, so we're going to introduce the song and you need to do blah, blah. So apart from you and Claire Simo, everyone else has need a bit of teaching. But
Okay.
I want you to introduce your first track of the show. Tell us what it is and why.
Okay, so I've chose The Coral and I've chose Dreaming of You, which was their first ever tune. Great band from the Northwest, from Merseyside on the Wirral. And this was the first song I ever played as a presenter on Radio City, and it was the Graveyard Shift at 2 a.m, 2002, and it's The Coral, Dreaming of You, on KCC Live.
You are listening to KCC Live 99.8 each and every Wednesday with me, Miguel, for the Rewind Hour, and we have been chatting to Jay Hynd. And something we picked up before, Jay, was we were talking about, how you got into the industry and the hard slog that you have to do. You start at the bottom, you spoke about making cups of tea, and then one thing that stood out for me was 5 nights a week you've done a show for free.
For free, yeah.
In a world that we live in now, I find young people, think I just have to do an Instagram post or 5 minutes of Instagram fame, and there doesn't seem to be, the hard work ethic. And something else you said about, not being an academic. What I'm finding in today's world is that, everyone, it's all about exams and results and everything else. But when you look at the old skilled labour, the people who are hands-on doing things, there seems to be a shortage of them. People who want to put the graft in. It's either paper-based or no one's doing these 12-hour days or whatever it takes. When from going in somewhere, knocking at the door, I presume, and then offered to make the tea to being there to then eventually being employed. That's just not 5 minutes of a post, and here I am.
Do you know what? People, it kind of have changed, and it does frustrate me a little bit. And seeing these people that call themselves bloggers and expect to get in places for free and expect this and expect that. There's some great bloggers out there. I'm not dissing it at all.
Of course.
And it's something good to look at getting into as well, because it's all changed now. Everything is digital. But to me, anyone who's done really well and who's really successful, if you meet them people, they're the ones that have started from the bottom and have worked their bum off to get there, literally putting in 15, 20-hour days every day, 7 days a week, and doing every job possible, running around, having a bit of initiative to kind of always be about asking what they can do, not just getting off at 3 o'clock, not just leaving, not getting out of bed at 10, doing a full stretch and putting the work and putting the hours in. They're the ones who do well.
So what do you think as organisations then, and employers and everyone else, or people who use social media as a platform, what do you think we can do to try and bring some of that back to the young people? Does the emphasis sit with us as the employers or people who have the companies, or is it down to the young people? How do we bring this back?
Do you know what? It probably goes to it is down to the individual, definitely, because you need that little bit of initiative to be able to get in there and do it and push yourself to do it. Employers probably could do more in terms of bringing in more kids for work experience. Like, I look at some radio stations now. I started in radio. It's difficult to get in because a lot of the radio stations in Liverpool are networked, and not just in Liverpool, right across the country. There's some great local shows in Liverpool. If you look at Radio City, if you look at what BBC Merseyside do, for instance, but there's a lot of network shows, so it's difficult to get in from that level and start from scratch. So maybe that, it is down to the employer to do a little bit more to get young people and fresh blood in, because in 5-10 years, are there going to be any good, talented producers or presenters or writers or technicians or whatever about if they haven't got that opportunity to get in there in the first place?
Okay, so something you definitely have is drive, and you spoke about, from being a young age and going in. What was the hook for you? Why did you have that push to do and then set up your own business and to work them five days a week for free?
Do you know what? It's because you kind of know I've got to do something special here to get in such a special place. So for me, Radio City was everything. It was, you know, it was kind of that shining big bright that you wanted to work up in that beacon up in the tower. And I wanted to do all I could to impress and to gain skills and knowledge and to be able to progress in radio and seeing such talented people, you know. And as I said before, in Liverpool, we can be quite limited in terms of media, but there's some great places in Liverpool. Line Pictures is here, for instance, where Hollyoaks is filmed. The Liverpool Echo's great. So it's all about pushing yourself to be able to work somewhere like that. Like if you look at Hollyoaks, they don't just bring anyone in. You've got to get in, you've got to work, whether you're behind the scenes, front of camera, working in the cafe in Line Pictures or whatever. You've got to work your bum off to be able to do that. So I knew I had a bit of a challenge because there's a lot of talented people out there, and there are people out there as well. For every person that's willing to work hard, there's 5 other people who are willing to work harder. You've got to keep pushing, you've got to keep going, and you've got to have that drive and ambition if you want to succeed.
100%. So something else that stands out greatly for me with you, Jay, is the work that you do in the community. You support a lot of charity organisations. I think it's probably where we first met, probably most well-known one is the James Bulger Memorial Trust. Tell us a little bit more about the community work and why you do that, because we find you at all of the events, you're presenting, you're fundraising, you'll take part in the activities. You know, that takes a lot of your time up, but every time I see you either present or you're promoting something or you're at something, it's 100% in energy and you give great support.
Do you know what I believe, Miguel, right? And a lot of people might shoot me down for this one, but I always think that if you're lucky enough to be able to do a job that I do or that yourself does or many other people in the city, then we've kind of got a little bit of a responsibility to help out organisations and to stand there with the microphone and talk about them, to shout about them on the platforms that we can. And that's why I've always hopefully tried my very best to do that. And a lot of the time that you do it, Claire Simo, who you spoke to on this show, is the same. Yeah. We won't be getting paid. We won't, you know, we're wanting to do that. And I do feel like you've got a little bit of a responsibility to do that. You know, I'm not a celebrity or someone who's very famous or anything, but I think there's a lot of celebs out there who've got that same attitude and they will support charity and support good causes. And the thing as well in Liverpool, there's a lot of them that deserve a lot of support. There's some great organisations doing some fantastic things. If you look at James Bulger Memorial Trust, you know, we've got one of the biggest kids hospitals on the planet in Liverpool in Alderhay, which I've done a lot of work with. We've got places like Clatterbridge. There's tons that do need help. So if we can do that from whatever way we can, whether it's about tweeting about them or about standing there with a mic and hosting a show for them, then do it. Like, why not? It's an hour, a couple of hours out your time. Do it.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to look at it. So moving on, let's get your second track. Tell us what it is and why.
So this song is a song who you might know. His name is Ben Howard.
Okay. A
little bit folky. Yeah. And I got into him a couple of years ago. Now, I left Radio City and I left in a little bit of a haze. So I won't go into too much detail. I got quite sick before I left. So I was in hospital for about 4 or 5 months. And I come back to work and I went back to Radio City doing breakfast a little bit too soon. And I wasn't well enough and I had to leave and whatever. So I had a really kind of dark, horrible 6 months after I left Radio City. I'd been there 14 years. And I just needed something to give me a little push. I was then commuting back and forth to Birmingham every day on the train, working for the BBC down there. I was working in London. And it just wasn't the best time for me. And there was one song in the charts called Keep Your Head Up by Ben Howard. And I literally took it literally. And it was a great tune that pushed me through and got me back motivated and got my head sorted again. So this is Ben Howard, Keep Your Head Up on KCC Live.
I have Jay Hynd in here today. I hope everyone who is listening is inspired as I am of his story, the work that he does in community. But we want to talk a little bit now about what does the future hold for Jay Hynd. I want to know, you know, you've achieved amazing things. What is next? Where are we going to take this? What's the guide? What's you personally? What do we want to do?
Ooh, that is a big question, Miguel de Foro. So I set up something called the Guide Liverpool. So I set that up. I was working in London and Birmingham, as I just said, and I wasn't overly happy. And I was thinking, I'm going to have to move to London here to make this media career work. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay in Liverpool. But without sounding like that, there wasn't much else for me to do. I'd got to where I wanted to go at Radio City. There were no other TV stations or anything. There was one little local TV station called Bay TV. I don't know if you remember that.
I sure do.
And myself and a girl called Ellie put a show together, and we'd done this on Bay TV. And I was thinking, there's still more to this. We need to big this up a little bit more because people were liking what we did. So I bought the rights to the show. got a bit of money put together and bought the rights, and it's called now The Guide Liverpool, and it's all online. So we shout about what's going on in the city, what's good about Liverpool. There's tons going on, as always, as you know, loads of events, gigs, whatever else. And yeah, it's all online now, and hopefully the plan is to just keep building, doing things a little bit differently to what you might see out there. So last week we started putting out daily little video updates from the city. So it's all about good news in Liverpool. And I just want to keep going with that, really. Basing in Liverpool, and then hopefully, who knows, in 12 months, take it over to Manchester, to the dark side, take it to London, take it to Birmingham, and just let it grow.
So in terms of when you look at these huge aspirations or, things that you want to achieve or where you've got to in your life so far, is there anything in particular you do to keep yourself focused and online? Do you meditate? Will you train? Will you socialize with friends? Would you work with a mentor? And I think what I'm trying to get at is anyone who is either thinking of setting up a business, working on their own, going into this field, coping mechanisms for them or things to keep them inspired, because when you set up yourself, there's a lot of doubt and a lot of pressure, and it's not, I want to set up a business and here we go.
If you do want to set up a business, and if you do it, and anyone who has done will know exactly what I mean, that doubt and that pressure is there every single day, no matter how far you come, no matter how good you think you are, you still have sleepless nights. I still think all the time, am I going to be able to pay his wages? Am I going to be able to pay that bill? Will I be able to do this? Every single day. And that's always there. And I think that's a good thing, because you don't get complacent. You're always worrying. You're always thinking, how am I going to do this? And it's always knowing as well what the next step is, what your next challenge is, where you're going to go next, where you're going to take it next, how much money you want to bring in the next month, what you want to do the next month in terms of what business you want to bring in. So it's always having that plan. But yeah, you've got to take time out. You can't do it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You've got to have a life as well. And you've got to put time aside to chill, to socialise, to get out there, to keep yourself active and fit. And it is tough. Running a business is hard, and I'm thick as two short planks. Well, so it's even harder for someone like me.
You just read my mind. Is something that I'm going to, and you might say that because that's what I was going to lean on in terms of like an academic, or if you speak about school. But that list that you've just rolled off, you're not as thick as two short planks. You've obviously built up a huge business expertise in terms of in your own field. And for me, I always say we all learn in different ways. And maybe if you were taught these subjects at school, you wouldn't even engage. But because you found a way that is a passionate way to do them in something that you love, then you're doing them on day to day. You've just spoke about sustainability, the way you have to go and interview people, you employ your staff to grow in your own business. That's a massive skill set, isn't it, that you learn, you've learned on the job.
But it's learning on the job, Miguel, and it's putting everything together that I've done from when I was 17 years old and putting it all together. And it's funny, I look at the Guide Liverpool now and I think, where did all that come from? How did I do that? But it's literally pieces of my career that I've taken and I've put them all together and worked out, put the platform together from what I've already done in the past using my skills. And it's kind of what you are taught by your careers advisor in school. It's one of the things that stands out, that all them skills will eventually, hopefully, come to good use. And touch wood, any skills I've had, I have done.
Well, for me, proof is in the pudding. It's been absolutely amazing to have you on. You have an inspiring story. We'll continue to watch it closely.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming in. But to wrap up, what is your last song and why?
So this song, we do LIMF every year. So last year, LIMF, the Liverpool International Music Festival, it's back in July. I host the main stage. So I'd done the full 3 days hosting the main stage last year. And we've done LIMF TV, all the backstage interviews with the artists.
Amazing.
And it was all brought to you by the Guide Liverpool, which I was made up with, very proud of. Big moment. And the final night we had Cast, great Liverpool band headline, and one of my favourite bands from the 90s. And one of my favourite songs is All Right. And I kind of stood there side of stage with my Guide Liverpool logos all over Sefton Park. 50,000 people seeing you on stage, and thought, this is all right, this. I'm actually